Greetings, friends. It's Dr. Marcia McFee in the Worship Design Studio. This is a little excerpt from what I call Here It Comes Again, Prep for the Easter Season. Every season I do one of these, and you can see the longer version, the hour-long version, at another YouTube video. But I just wanted to give you a little taste in here. We started out by talking about this flip book in the Worship Design Studio that I have for every season of every liturgical year that has a podcast in it where I have brainstormed with my guest experts who are all nationally known worship artists. And we brainstorm about the season. And we talked about then the history and the theology of the season and some ideas for themes before we got into the themes that I have available, that I have used, that are in the Worship Design Studio app. So that's what you're going to see in this shorter excerpt. Enjoy. So let's go and see what we've got happening in the Worship Design Studio in the Design app for the Easter season, and take a closer look at that. Let me close these windows. So you can always click on Worship Series here in the main menu, and it brings you to the list of my series. And these are series from the last 5 years, and there's 34 in all right now. But if you want to get right to the ones on the Easter season, you just click on the Easter season box and you click filter, and it's going to show you the 5 that I have for the Easter season. Now, what I'm trying to do is always have both lectionary and non-lectionary. So I noticed that in the last 4 years I had done all lectionary. There's 1 for A, 2 for B, and 1 for C. So I thought, time to do a non-lectionary focused one. So that's what I'm doing this year, and it's called Resurrection Stories. So let me just tell you a little bit about it. So when you click on this, you'll always see a little description of the series here. So you can get a just at a glance kind of idea. But then you can get lots more information over here on the right side before you even click on the Use Template. Resurrection Stories is a non-lectionary series, and I really wanted to focus on the ways that resurrection can happen in all of our lives. So it's not just this difficult theological concept. It's not just this story that we tell about our faith, about the possibilities of God. It is actually the possibilities of God in each one of our lives every day. And so I thought that it would be a great series to focus on people who have turned their lives around and the testimony of those people, or stories about those people. If you can't find people who will actually give their testimony either on video or live, or in an interview style or whatever you do, then you could just incorporate stories of people who have changed their lives into your sermon, or have a story section as part of the readings. Let's say we have a scripture reading, and then we have a contemporary reading, which is a story of someone who turned their life around. So you could do it in many, many different ways. But the idea is to talk about resurrection as something that can happen for all of us in our lives. So when you click on things over here on the right-hand side, the inspiration page is what you create, because I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so the Design app always invites you to create an inspiration page as the first thing that you do. Now, I have chosen some images here that help me explain in images what this Resurrection Story series is about. This really cool picture over here that I found, I just love this. These sort of prison bars, but you can see they're kind of falling away, but here's this image of Jesus behind there. I just think that's incredible. And then this big sculpture that was a chain that's broken, and that's just coming apart. I loved that. Again, I was looking for more images of fences being ripped open, that kind of thing. And then, of course, this just free sort of feeling. So Easter season is a time of celebrating all the ways in which resurrection is possible in our lives. So this is called what I call a synopsis, and the Design app invites you to write a synopsis. It does have a character limit because, number one, we want it to fit in this spot but it also is a really good discipline to write a synopsis that's concise, that can be something you can use in your advertisement about what's coming up, that kind of thing. So there's always the title. It asks you to enter a scripture fragment that sort of is the essence of what the theme is, and so I'm the resurrection and the life was the one that I chose there. Now, when you click on Brainstorms, and I just uploaded this right before this seminar, so those of you who've been waiting for me to do this, we've got resource ideas now, and when you click on Brainstorms, it actually opens up the brainstorm window that your team will be working in, and then when you click on the note itself, it opens it up, and I've attached my resource ideas for resurrection stories. So I'm excited about some of these ideas. Now this one is a little bit different than some of the others because I have a feeling that you will choose maybe different titles for each one than I put for each one of the Sundays, depending on what kind of testimonies you can get. So I love this. What's your story? You know, and storytelling, you could incorporate storytelling in small group activities. You could expand this, and this is what I really like to do with series, is ask myself, how can we expand this series into other parts of the church? So some more images. That's the synopsis. And here's the weekly theme. So I have resurrected from imprisonment, resurrected from addiction, resurrected from homelessness, resurrected from illness, resurrected from oppression, resurrected from the depths, which focuses on mental illness. And then the final one is Pentecost, which is resurrection spirit, or the spirit of resurrection, or something like that. But those are my weekly themes, but you're going to do themes based on whatever testimonies you can get. So for instance, I suggest here that if you can get someone to tell their story about having, maybe they were in prison and turned their life around, and now they're out and they're living out their life in a Christian way, or resurrected from addiction. Someone who might be willing to tell their story of addiction and how they are recovering from that. Homelessness, someone who's come back from economic ruin, or what felt like economic ruin and has turned their lives around, maybe through the goodness of others. Resurrected from illness doesn't mean just people who have been so-called cured, but people who are dealing with an illness in a way that is a resurrected spirit, even perhaps. Then resurrected from oppression. There's a lot of refugees that tell their stories, and this country is made up of so many people who were oppressed in their homelands. So that could be a possibility. Resurrected from the depths. Mental illness is so stigmatized, and perhaps this one is suggesting a young veteran that may talk about learning to live with PTSD. It could be something like that. So it really is going to depend on the stories that perhaps you can find, people you can find, but something each week about that will inspire us to our own resurrection. So what I did in here is we did more general resources for each of the worship arts. There's amazing video project that this church did. This is such a great idea. And they just asked people to make 2-minute videos on their phones or whatever they could do. Of course, this assumes a more media-savvy church, but folks sent those in, and then they made compilations of that. So that not only might you have one story, testimony that's the focal point leading into the sermon or in the midst of the sermon, but you might have a time of compilation videos going, people just telling their story in a short way. There's some great examples on there. So a little bit about storytelling, a little bit about the dramatic arts. This is an idea about having locks and keys as symbols. That's also a visual idea. But you could find old keys here during the Lent season, and the idea is that you attach maybe a piece of paper or something to it, and then during the season give out these keys that might have a message on them, or what have you about unlocking resurrection in our lives. Telling the story, again, storytelling is the heart of this whole series. This is a suggestion. This is a poem that many people might recognize, Maya Angelou's poem, Still I Rise. I think she did it at a inauguration. And this could be an inspiring poem about rising. I rise, I rise, I rise. So in examples for call to worship, visual arts, you could use weaving as a visual arts idea, weaving together both the resurrection story of the Bible, but also then our resurrection stories, creates this tapestry of resurrection. So that could be an ongoing thread, literally, but it could also act as a visual that changes and morphs and adds on to every week. So here's some stuff about weaving. This is a really cool, look at this. This weaver hung things like that, really cool. So, just lots of ideas for you. Planting things, that could also be a metaphor for resurrection. So as you see, lots of different ideas. Here's a couple of books about practicing resurrection that can inspire you in your sermon preparation. Resurrection Spirit is the Pentecost title. So I think there's lots of things here if this feels like the right thing for your congregation this year. So let's just take a quick look at some of the other themes here in the Easter season. Rise Up is the one I was telling you about. It's based on lectionary year A, but again, if you are in a church that doesn't follow the lectionary religiously, then, it probably is okay to use a different lectionary year or a theme based on a different lectionary year if your people are not going to notice that much. But if you're really following those lectionary years, then of course you wouldn't want to do that. But just so you know what's in here, this is that one I was describing that really took the idea of continued education or continuing our own education about who we are as Christians and deals with the big deals of the faith, such as belief, suffering, sacrifice, judgment. So it's big deals. Quite a preaching challenge, I think, this one is. Last year, I did a thing called A Place to Call Home. It was lectionary based, year B. And I just want to mention this one because what really struck me as I was working on this one is we have all these people coming for Easter. And oftentimes we think the Sundays after Easter is like, oh, God, Lent's done, Holy Week is done. Oh, let's do something simple. I need to relax, So we call them low Sundays sometimes right after Easter. Well, we may be missing a great opportunity because there are so many people on Easter. Why not have something provocative and ready to go to follow up on and inspire them to come? So this one, A Place to Call Home, really invited people, especially visitors. What would it be like just for the next 7 weeks, just for the Great 50 Days, to explore what it means to have a church home? So that's really what that one is focused on. All right, Dare to Dance Again was another year B lectionary based Easter season and focused on the metaphor of dance as a way of celebrating the resurrection of living life to the fullest. But let's just spend our last couple of minutes. This one is lectionary based year C. I did this the last cycle, so 4 years ago. It's called The Cup of Freedom, and it celebrates freedom that we can claim and live through Jesus. Freedom to rise again, to sing, to follow, to heal, to love again. And it's based on a song. So let me open this up. Resources for this. Now, some of these in earlier years, like this was the first year that I did the Worship Design Studio. So I have an actual audio podcast of my guest experts brainstorming about what they would do if they were doing this season. So that's really cool in there. But let me just open up the resource ideas document, which is not as graphically pretty as the other ones because it was early in my career of doing this. But here's that song. It's really a wonderful song. Now, this is not published anywhere, so all I ask is that you always, that you can use this music, but that you always cite the correct citations and give credit where credit is due, even though it's not published anywhere. So it's a gospel style. I will take the cup of freedom and call on the name of God. I will take the cup of freedom and call on the name of God. Yeah, and you can see that there's a descant there, so the choir has some parts that really, it's really great. It's like underneath, it's just driving quarter notes. I will take the cup of freedom, and the congregation is singing over the top of it. It's really cool. Now let me show you the second page here. The verses are the words of institution, or they can be used as the words of institution in communion. This is the bread given of the earth, received of the fields, it will set you free. This bread of life I will take up, and I will call on the name of God. Second verse, then you go back to the refrain, and then second verse, this is the cup given of the earth, received of the vine, it will set you free. This cup of freedom I will take up, and I will call on the name of God. And then you go back to the refrain. And believe me, it's so easy that congregations really learn it quickly, and it becomes such a celebratory thing. And I think it's one of those crossover songs that you could use in a traditional service as well as in a contemporary or alternative or jazz or whatever you want to call it. All right, so as you can see, I have music ideas, visual ideas, liturgy ideas for every Sunday of this season. And again, this is a lectionary one, year C, so that's this year. So that's there in the studio for you to use. Now, let me just show you real quick for those of you who are in the studio, or if you're not and you're considering doing it, if you decide to use the template, what happens is you click on Use Template. It takes you right to editing the synopsis. So if you want to edit what I have written as the synopsis, you can edit that there. You can use a different scripture fragment if you want to use that, a different scripture theme. You can add, if you have more than one service, you can add another service here, and so the program will know that you're designing for two different services. You can switch things around, so all of these are the different weeks. So you see it's popped up Freedom to Sing, and if I want Freedom to Sing to actually be week 3 and Freedom to Follow to be week 2 for some reason, at any rate, that's all possible for you to adapt what I've got there. And then of course you can edit the frame dates and when things start and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to show you that, and then you're off and running. And what happens is that all of my brainstorming, all of those resources that you just saw, they automatically transfer. This is now on in your account. So you don't have to go anywhere else. These ideas are already there and ready for you to look at. And when you go back to your list of, you won't have as many as I have here because I have a lot of series in here, but it has put the Cup of Freedom right here as your first one so that you're working on that. That's your latest one. Okay, friends, well, that's what is in the Worship Design Studio for Easter season. I hope you've been inspired to get started on working on the Easter season. I want to invite those of you who are not part of the Worship Design Studio to consider joining us, because all of these are available only to members, the actual resources themselves. Of course, I hope just even if you just use this webinar to help inspire you to begin to think about Easter, that's great. But if you are interested in subscribing, it is all year long. We have these kinds of webinars. We have lots of other kinds of webinars about all the different worship arts. And I want to invite you to email me if you were on this webinar. Email me at marcia@marciamcfee.com or through the website at the info@worshipdesignstudio.com, and just say, Marcia, I was on the Easter season podcast. I'd like to be part of the studio, and I will give you a special deal for being here and joining us tonight. So just dash off an email to me. I'd love to be in touch with you and get you going in the Worship Design Studio. All right, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.